We've always been at the forefront of trying to ensure that we don't innovate for just the sake of innovating, but there's really a customer need or a societal need. 90% of the companies have pledged to try and make their supply chain more agile. And this is where, obviously 3D printing really comes into play, being able to do on-demand manufacturing. So in our managed print services, we've released some really great updated analytics capability. And we're already seeing customers being able to be more productive. They're able to keep kind of their security more in policy. I think also I have to say they save costs too. Care AI is a real breakthrough for us. Obviously the care of our customers and the servicing of the customers is extremely important, and it's a thing that we're very proud of. Care AR is the augmented reality and AI part of it, but we put it with other elements, DocuShare and XMPie, to create a platform that's really helping us to revolutionize the service experience.
Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Luella Fernandez, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Tracy Koziel, SVP of Global Offerings at Xerox. Today we'll be discussing how to innovate in a mature market. So welcome, Tracy. It's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Real pleasure.
So, Tracy, I know you joined Xerox around 7 years ago. So could you maybe tell us a bit about your career history prior to Xerox and your role at Xerox today?
I've been in the technology industry for most of my career. I've been very lucky. I've worked for some ginormous brands like General Motors, Motorola, if you're from Europe, and Dell. I also did a startup as well before actually coming to Xerox. My background, though, mostly is not print. It's telecommunications, it's mobile phones. So I spent quite a lot of my career at Motorola. And I think probably a lot of foundational stuff came from there too. So, mobile phone industry is fast, it's agile, you have to keep on trend. And so, I had a great career at Motorola. And then I was lucky enough to join Xerox. Great company, great people. I think that's one of the things that always gets said. And I've been here 7 years, and I'm in charge of the Global Offerings Group, and then I'm in charge of most of what we call core engineering. So that covers print, services, software and solutions.
Yes, so I think this is really good timing for this podcast because Xerox recently hosted an Investor Day at the NASDAQ in New York City, and customer-led innovation was a key theme throughout the day. Can you share some of the directions and technologies that Xerox is pursuing and that you discussed at that event last week?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for Xerox. Obviously, we are innovating everywhere in the company, but I would say, it's alive and kicking innovation in both kind of what I would call the new businesses as well as our traditional print and services business. I think the future's bright for Xerox, but I also think what's great is in our new businesses that come out of PARC, which is a real creative hub. It's really about helping the world. And I know that sounds quite glib, but truly, we've always been at the forefront of trying to ensure that we don't innovate for just the sake of innovating, but there's really a customer need or a societal need. And that's where I think we've been sort of focusing some of our new businesses. So if we talk about like some of the things that have hit us actually, all of us very hard through the last 2 years, the global supply chain. My job most of the day is supply chain challenges, even now 2 years in. And, I think there was some great information sharing between larger companies and also through the analytic companies. 90% of the companies have pledged to try and make their supply chain more agile. And this is where, obviously 3D printing really comes into play. Being able to do on-demand manufacturing is going to be, really critical kind of going forward. And so we're quite proud that, our 3D printer, LMX, has gone through really rigorous testing with the US Navy. And we're now going from obviously running those in what they call their university and getting out there and actually placing them onto ships now. And it's really kind of, I feel quite proud to work for us right now, where you're actually deploying onto ships so that they can make parts on the go, and they're not going to have to pull into port to try and pick up or have air support in terms of bringing parts. It's really actually a big change. So 3D, I think, is a big area of innovation that we can help obviously ourselves and our shareholders, but really, help the global supply chain. And another area of innovation, the aging infrastructure. I think this is obviously something that, all around the world, even in the Western countries, it's a big issue, right? The bridges are very old and crumbling, and roads are in disrepair, tunnels. And we focus here on we call it IoT, so basically some sensors, smart software and capabilities. And we have a JV in Australia with the Victorian government there. And we've actually deployed onto several bridges these sensors, and basically, it's looking at vibrations, it's looking at weight, it's looking at how the weather, contracting and expanding, and that's really going well. We're going to be expanding that 3 times the amount of bridges this year. So the crumbling infrastructure, and you even heard it last night, I know, on President Biden's speech, that the infrastructure, it's a major concern. And, we are talking to the US government too. And I think just sort of a last one, climate change. Xerox is very proud to have always thought about how do we affect our the carbon emissions, how do we make sure circular economy. We were one of the first to do remanufacturing, and we continue to look here. So climate change is a huge issue. 4% of the global emissions comes from air conditioning. And so we have some great technology that's just come out of alpha, going to beta with one of the largest air conditioning companies in the world. And, what it's showing is that we can actually reduce the energy taken by 80%. So there's 3 examples of some of the new technology in the new businesses that we are creating to help, obviously, our customers, but also, like I said, it's not too much of a reach, but to help the world as well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because I attended the Investor Day virtually, and it's really fascinating to hear about Xerox's move outside of print into some of these other areas, like you mentioned, IoT, 3D printing, and also clean tech. And I think we might come to those a bit later on, but I think it was really interesting to see how Xerox is really accelerating its innovation growth in those areas. And, I think a lot of that activity has happened over the past 2 or 3 years, and it's now being able to commercialize and monetize that. So beyond those kind of adjacent areas, I wanted to ask you about, particularly innovation in the print industry, because we see that, typically traditional print vendors, they're innovating in their core business, but, the market is declining. So I wanted to understand, in terms of the direction for Xerox going forward, what kind of strategies does Xerox plan to take in terms of innovating in the mature market, which is print?
Yeah, so thanks for asking that question. I think a lot of people may think, print, old technology, what can it do? The printer is an IoT, right? And a tremendous amount of information goes across it. So the important thing here in a mature market is, in some ways, it's even more important to listen to your customer to see how they're using the technology. And of course, you've got to keep on trend. You've got to keep looking at what's happening, and how people are using devices, where they're using devices, what their needs are. And so that's something that we really do on a regular basis. And, what really they want is something that's current in terms of their technology. They need it to be relevant to their employees. So obviously being more productive, how do they, enable more capabilities for them, and resilient. Okay, because security, whether you're a small business or a large business, that's something for us that is, absolutely one of the top requirements across any of our offerings, whether it's, software or on the equipment side. So today, I think customers are looking they want to get the most out of what they have, but they also want access to new. And I think that's where we are doing a pretty good job. So, of course, look, the engines, the IoTs, as we call them, they are very important, but there's less there in terms of differentiation. I think it's important to absolutely innovate. Security, absolutely, you've got to keep on top of that. Changes every day. Zero trust is really what you have to design to these days. I think digitization, so the speed in which you can obviously scan in and digitize is very important. So areas like that we will continue. And of course, in the production print, IQ and all those things, color IQ are very important. But the secret sauce, I think, these days as well, is really in the software and the solutions and what can you do in terms of providing future-proofing, we call it. So that for us is something that we really take to heart. And of course, over the last couple of years, we've had to listen very carefully. We saw more and more people go to, a hybrid work environment. Working from home, obviously, coming into the office, maybe, a couple of times a week. That's getting back, I guess, we started to see more people come back to the office and actually mobile, right? So they're between places. They, need to be able to print, or they need to be able to do things when they're in the coffee shop or wherever that will be. And so we obviously spent over the last couple of years making sure that our technology, you can actually connect to it, anywhere, right? So being able to get to work processes anywhere is super important for the customer. So we've been spending a lot of time there innovating around how do I get to business processes? How do I get to my workflow wherever I work? So Office, we introduced a whole bunch of, new quiet, small printers, all connected to the cloud though. Right, and that allows you to get at work processes. In the office, we just released, an A3 product, fast digitization. We updated it to include McAfee security, and we had some update there in terms of our ConnectKey software. So again, making sure we innovate where there's value for the customer, of course, in production, innovating around obviously the solution. I think that something that's now also very important for customers is giving them insights, analytics, kind of giving that at their fingertips. So in our managed print services, we've released some really great updated analytics capability. And we're already seeing customers being able to be more productive. They're able to keep kind of their security more in policy. I think also I have to say they save costs too. So on the managed print services side, we're looking at what makes sense. And then, that's going to be the same also in production. We've introduced a new insights dashboard there as well. So look, there's a lot to do in print and services around innovation. But it all starts with listening to the customer. What's the most important thing?
Yeah, and I think I wanted to pick up on a couple of things there because I absolutely agree. It's all about customer-driven innovation, and I think you mentioned about it being more challenging to differentiate on the hardware. So it really has to be around software and solutions, and you mentioned analytics there, and I think that's a real opportunity for Xerox in particular, having very strong credentials on the analytics side to be able to uncover opportunities for digital transformation. So, and NPS, still moving to that kind of next generation model, I guess, of NPS, moving more towards digitization of workflow. So you mentioned analytics there and your focus on analytics. Are there any other digital services that you're focusing on as well?
Yeah, I think one of the great things is that we're sort of a trusted advisor. And so we've been building new capabilities. Again, actually sort of, I think during the pandemic, we really accelerated to help our customers. So things like capture and content services have really, increased dramatically. And it sounds simple, but the digital mailroom, when all of us went home in March 2 years ago, you still needed to get access to physical mail. There's checks coming in that need to be cashed for companies. And so we very quickly mobilized and our capture and content services really boosted there. And what we found there too, we actually able to help them. It wasn't about just capturing this content and serving it up ready for the next business process. We started to do the additional business process. So, for instance, all those checks, many of the companies said, well, can you deposit them for us straight away? That'll save us 3 days in cash flow. And we're like, certainly, right? So that capture and content became, very important, and that's growing very nicely. And we are capable of doing that, obviously in the US and Canada and over in Western Europe. And I think the other area was the content services that we can offer around sort of marketing and communication. So our CES offering. And here, again, being able to take content in, being able to make campaigns for them, whether it was for internal people or external, and being able to deliver that through multiple channels, whether it's print or email or SMS. These are things, again, that we've been expanding with our customers. So, yeah, it's not just about our traditional services. We call it land and expand. We keep adding capabilities as we listen and hear, well, we need help with this. So, yeah, those are two examples.
So based on that, you mentioned about the change in how hybrid work is impacting the office environment and print and workflow. Can you talk a bit about how Xerox is innovating to support workers from working from anywhere, and particularly the type of solutions and services Xerox is offering in that space?
Yeah, so it's a kind of, I hope this goes across okay, because I'm just going to sort of say how I feel. One offering called Workflow Central was conceived in the pandemic, developed and released and launched in the pandemic. And I think it's really a breakthrough because we've always had this great capability, for our printers to do more than the 4 functions, print, scan, copy, in fact. So, we have hundreds, 100 plus apps that you can be more productive around business processes and, connections to clouds, etc. But now we've enabled being able to connect from your phone, from your tablet, from your PC. And yes, you can even do it from the MFP. Workflow Central gives you access to these to apps that help you be more productive. So things like translation, you can do it on your, you could do it from your phone. Redaction of documents, so when you're on the go, again, when you think about, I'm certainly more mobile in some respects. I don't travel, as much, but I travel between office and home and local areas more actually over the last 6 months. So being able to do things like, I don't have time to read everything, but translating a document from text to audio and then listening in the car. These are things that you can do from Workflow Central. And here, I think we've got some really good early feedback from customers. So Buena Vista School District in California is using Workflow Central. And again, I'm a big advocate for diversity and inclusion. And for me, this story really hits home. Their children in their school district, 70% of them are Hispanic or Korean. So English is a second language. It's difficult for many of them to learn. And so being able to provide Workflow Central, the teaching staff have said it's just provided a whole different level of ability for kids to learn at similar pace. So they're translating their lessons into Korean and Spanish before lessons. They're also translating for some kids to audio, because they learn better by audio than actually the physical word. So translation they're using throughout their school district. It's gone crazy. But they're also using other elements for the staff. So there's a thing called Summarize. So when they do their kind of teacher, either teacher parent or teacher work groups, they handwrite notes, and then basically they now scan it into the MFP, and it turns it into a written document so that everyone can read. Then they're able to translate it. So they're finding they're using they're using Summarize, where it takes down notes. I mean, they're using the whole gamut actually of Workflow Central. And to me, that's great. It's great for Xerox, but from a societal standpoint, this is brilliant. This is exactly what we should be doing. Creating things that make a difference for people to have the same ability to learn. So anyway, that's a successful story there. Another item would be, we just launched a new workplace kiosk. So if you're out and about, it's a mobile app. Right, so it's brilliant. You're able to QR code in very simply. You're able to pay by Apple Pay, Google Pay, and as I say, the old-fashioned credit card as well. And so you're able to actually, access and be able to print. So these will be going in things like coffee shops and libraries and hotels. So that's sort of two areas that shows how we adapted in the 2 years. We changed our point of view of what was important. We moved some other programs to the side, and we concentrated and developed these offerings. Yeah,
it's really interesting to hear that Xerox created that, as you say, in the pandemic, and it's making it more accessible to a broader audience. So, that kind of inclusion that you mentioned with the school children. And I think it's interesting because, I think, like you say, print is still very much alive, and there's still opportunities for better using print in different applications. And I think, the fact that you're giving access to print as well as workflow solutions is really interesting, and you're still able to innovate around those capabilities. And I did want to ask you also about Connect Key, because I know that has been something that's been quite key and a strong differentiator for Xerox for some time in terms of the kind of solutions first approach. And, I know you work very closely with channel partners on that. So, how is Xerox helping its channel partners innovate in terms of their own businesses and build more revenue streams through that solutions development?
Yeah, I think we had more listening conversations with our channel partners in that first year of the pandemic. Then I'll be honest, probably the previous 2 years put together, they were struggling. These are, a lot of them are small businesses. We feel very responsible for their families, and so we really listened to them. What they needed was, they were pretty strong at selling print, but they didn't have the knowledge and perhaps weren't using the tools available to them in terms of, how do I go to the next level? How do I become, be able to sell software and solutions? And so we upped our training. We put on more, obviously it was webinars, but it kind of specialized as well for the channel, depending on the types of partners. In production, obviously the graphic comms world was going much quieter. The graphic comms needs kind of the world to be social to really do well. So it was really about fighting it out for them to gain more business. And so we doubled down with them actually on embellishment and workflow. So we introduced, obviously, we call them embellishment kits that can go on the lowest of the production products. we not only just sort of drop the technology off. I think that's the difference with Xerox. I think some of our competitors is we help them understand how to use it. So we actually provide how you design, for embellishment, gold, silver, white, how to cost it, how to market it, and how to sell. And so during the pandemic, actually, embellishment grew 15%. And I know that we got more than our fair share, and our partners, our valued partners, were able to step up. The other good thing for them there is there's more margin in it. So that's a kind of a production example. So helping them to learn how to sell software, helping them to learn, they're already brilliant at selling a subscription. So now, again, helping them to learn how to sell software as a click, a digital click. And so Workflow Central that we just talked about, that is fully available to our channel partners. And we have actually, again, we have to look internally as well. So how do you incentivize them to obviously sell more software? Because it's all about, we call it land and expand. You've got the print business. What else can you expand? Digital services, IT services. Let's help our channel partners grow, then we grow. So that's been really good. The other thing that was important to listen to was we were still too complex to deal with. I think we're one of the simpler manufacturers to work with. That was one of the things I think that I brought to Xerox. In the mobile phone industry, it's platform, platform, platform. You may put 60 phones out in a year, but there's only going to be 4 or 5 platforms. That's it. So we've simplified a lot over the last few years, but it still wasn't enough. So we've been, bringing in just recently, actually, the A3 products were shipped last week. There were certain things that you had to do physically. So you had to have physically something in terms of setting something up. We changed that to digital now. So these guys now, they can have a product on the last day of the month and they can configure it, which way they need to do and still be able to get that out the door. They don't need to have 2 separate models. So simplification, that cost of supply chain, shortening it in terms of obviously lead time is very important. So that's my second thing. We're not there yet, guys. If there's anyone, I know we're not the best. We need to keep working it. Channel partners, we hear you. We've got to keep working. And then the last thing is around insights, Luella. We need to give the same tools that we're using, some of the dashboards and everything. So again, over the pandemic, we really upped our game in terms of providing information to the partners. So of their machines in place at customers, there's dashboards. How are they running? Do they have unprofitable myth? Help them point that out. Why is it unprofitable? What do they need to do? Do they need to switch that product out? Do they need our help? From a service standpoint, getting them to see kind of end of service. Obviously, we have contracts, certain products, helping them again. Okay, this customer, are they growing? Are they contracting? What do they need? So we've been giving them insights. So those are the 3 things on channel partners, helping them to understand how to, grow and grab where the market is going, simplify how to work with them, and give them better tools and insights. Those are the 3 things that we've been working on at Xerox. In some ways, that's innovation as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's a real need for the channel to transform. I think, like you say, they're very strong, obviously, on understanding the print environment, but that gives them a real opportunity to extend their value to other elements of the IT environment or IT infrastructure. And I think, building those software and solutions, selling skills, and also being incentivized makes a big difference, because I think that's always the challenge, is that, it's the hardware focus that most of them have been running with in terms of their business models. And I know we spoke previously around partners working together, because I think that's also something we're seeing in the ecosystem, is that partners who maybe don't have the skills to develop particular software applications can actually benefit from products that have been developed by other partners. Can you talk a bit about that in terms of your personalized application builder program?
With our ConnectKey software capability, we obviously have APIs that allow us to do all these creative applications. So obviously we obviously provide, but actually the partners are actually somewhat, they're the true heroes, because they are dealing with thousands and thousands of customers. They know the customers best. And so many of them sign up the personalized application builder. Again, we train them. How do you actually, write apps? There's a simple SDK. And what we found is the partners that pick this up flourish. They are picking up new business. And it's because, quite honestly, obviously they've probably got great service. They've got great, but they're a trusted partner, a trusted advisor. And so they're finding pain points for their customers and they're creating apps. So I'll give you a few that, like Etiq in Italy. They deal with very fancy brands. Some of my favorites, the fashion icons. They created a office app there that allowed them to track their employees in terms of badge in, badge out. They did several things, but because they did those applications, they won the deal because the other guys didn't have that. They knew there was a few pain points they were having problems with. They went in and did that. Etiq was one. Just Tech in the US, they are huge in terms of creating apps, but they saw an issue actually with fax, good old-fashioned fax. There was so many companies that were still on analog, and they really wanted to move to a more secure. They saw an opportunity. They grabbed it. They're doing fabulous, with that application. Another European company, TBC. They are very strong in terms of green economy, and so they created a few apps around returning cartridges and waste bottles and those types of things, and that is being picked up all across Europe by other partners. I mean, it's really, again, it's exactly what we wanted to happen, right? People provide innovation. And they're actually sharing it. And it's providing that ability to, actually get more printers, more MFPs, because it's unique and no one else can offer. It's also generating new money with a digital clip, because most of these things they're charging for. So yeah, the PAB has been a great success, continues to be, and I think it's a great differentiation for the partner.
That's what we're seeing in the market, is that, the Xerox partners tend to be very mature in terms of their longevity in the industry, but also with, many of them moving to this kind of software solutions approach. And I think that's really testament to, I think Xerox's training and certification program as well that it has, and through the ConnectKey and personal application builder platform. So it's great to hear those examples and hear how partners are able to innovate their own businesses, but also, I guess, help their customers drive better business outcomes, whether it's security, sustainability, reducing cost and so on. So, just to sort of pick up on that kind of innovation theme again, because we talked a bit about innovation in terms of technology, business models, but also generally in the print industry, there's a need for building a more innovative culture. I think, generally in any traditional legacy company, and I'm sure you've seen it in the telecoms industry as well, is that, generally the legacy companies it's quite hard for them to change, and they're almost like oil tankers rather than the speedboats that can, turn very quickly. And, have you seen, with your recent acquisition with CareAR, which I know it's a few years now, but are you seeing that's helped build more of an innovative culture at Xerox? And, how is that playing out in terms of some of the offerings in the market today?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously CareAR is a real breakthrough for us. Obviously the care of our customers and the servicing of the customers is extremely important, and it's a thing that we're very proud of. But, as we have an aging population in terms of service, CareAR has come at just a perfect time, because it's really helping us in terms of, for several reasons. I'm going to bring it up again. The sustainability piece is very important to us. So having Care AR, which has got sort of three components, we would say. Assist, which is very much kind of like being able to assist through, the mobile phone app, how to, solve a problem with a printer. And it's all the way down to A4, all the way up to big production. So being able to have that phone call, we're seeing between 7 to 10% resolve rate improvement by just using Care AR Assist. I mean, that's thousands of trucks that aren't rolling. So that's fabulous. I think, the next stage of Care AR, which is Instruct, which you'll be hearing about very soon. This can be for both the user, but also like for instructing how, operators. So again, this is something that obviously is great for us in terms of, helping to train new TSRs, technical service reps. But think of all of those prints, especially large prints, they've got the same issue. Aging, retiring, and they need to have the ability to train their operators in a very quick way, but a consistent way. And so Instruct is going to be very important. And then Insights, obviously, sits on top. What we did here, though, we did obviously Care AR is the augmented reality and AI part of it, but we put it with other elements, DocuShare and XMPie, to create a platform. So again, as we start, sharing this, which we are, with all of our customers in terms of, this is what it could do for you. We're not just having a technology. It's now, okay, so you have the technology, but you have a way to deposit that into repositories like DocuShare, be able to take the insights with XMPie, turn it around. How do you keep improving? And so that really, Care AR is a platform that's really helping us to sort of, I would say, revolutionize the service experience. So that is something that absolutely, from a change of mindset, we have 5,500 of our technical service people using them. My team in engineering that supports, when the technical guys on the ground can't meet, all of them use Care AR to assist in remote solve. So yeah, I mean, it's really important. So you have big things like that change, and I think there's also simple things that can do. When I came to Xerox, it's interesting. I've had a good career. I'm very grateful to the big companies I work for, but I came in from another industry, so I wasn't actually sort of probably trusted. So I started with a smaller piece of the business. It was a great thing to do. I learned a lot. And what I saw was that the people are capable of innovation. They want to do it. They're very customer focused, but sometimes the mindset. And it's simple things like when I came, the name of the group was Office. And I said, why do you call Office? We're talking about that we want to be able to use this on our mobile phone, that we want to be able to use it when we travel. And I said, it's the workplace. We're supporting the workplace wherever it is. So we changed our name to Workplace, and it changed the whole dynamic of how we talked about the customers and what their needs were. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but there's simple things you can do. And then there's the revolutionary things like Care AR that can help print industry really step up and move forward and be more agile.
Yeah, and I guess that's even more relevant now that the change from the office to the workplace, and obviously it's the hybrid workplace now. So it's all about providing access to the print and document environment regardless of location or device. And I think that is quite a clear strategy in the industry in general. And I think with Care AR, it just seems a really exciting prospect at the moment. I was, as I said, I was watching the Investor Day presentation, and I saw that the target is to drive 70 million revenue over the next I think it was over this year or the next year or so. And I think it just shows the opportunity with AR, not just only on the service side, but I can see how that technology could be applied to other areas, whether it's education, training, instruction, as you mentioned, but even workplace collaboration. So it's great to hear that you're integrating that with your other platforms like XMPie and DocuShare. Yeah, so I just I think that's been really great in terms of understanding where Xerox is in terms of its innovation strategy. I think we've covered its technology vision beyond print with 3D printing, IoT, and clean tech, which I think is great in terms of sustainability focus that could perhaps be applied again to the broader office environment as well. And you mentioned your kind of background in the mobile industry before, and I guess that's given you some really interesting insights into how to apply that kind of approach and model and platform approach to prints. But before that, could you tell us a bit about perhaps what your very, very first job was, and any particular lessons you learned from that?
Yeah, I think probably my team here are so bored of me telling it, but I'm so glad to be able to tell it again because, my first job was absolutely my job that left the lasting impression of probably who I am, even today. So I was lucky. I started off at it's called Vauxhall Motors in Luton in England, which is part of GM. And I was a commercial apprentice. So you went to work and you went to school 2 days a week. That's how you did your degree. We did 3 years of the apprenticeship was literally from start to finish of how a car gets made. So after our first week of induction, 300 apprentices, you were all sent out into different places in the workforce. And I was lucky because I started off literally at the first step. My first week was driving in a truck up to the steel mills to collect the steel, to come back to the press shop. The second week was in the press shop, these gigantic, 50 feet presses, frightening, right, with earmuffs for a week. And I went through all the way through three years till the last day was driving to the docks with the finished cars. What that did for me was, I kind of knew it, but it really put to heart that you don't do anything without a team. Every person has a role to play. If that person can't do their job, then something's going to happen. Either it's bad quality or we don't deliver. There's going to be something that's going to be missed along the way. And I just got a real, I think it was instilled from my parents, but that 3 years of commercial apprenticeship really instilled in me that teamwork is everything. Having respect for your fellow worker, regardless of where they are. And the other thing is lead by example. Never expect your team to do anything that you wouldn't do. So I carry that forward today. I try and be the first person onto the battlefield, and I'll be the last one off. If we have engineering issues and I have no idea how to fix it myself, I will be there with a cup, feeding them coffee and tea, whatever it needs to be. And so for me, that was the best thing. And I'm trying to bring apprenticeships back to Xerox. So we are doing more internships. We have a relationship with a Better Chance, which is for kids that of colour that don't have, access to good education. So we're bringing in some kids for internships from there and everything. So I'm hoping that I can help. As I started my career, I'm hoping I can, sort of finish my career helping others to see what I got, which I think, honestly, is stood me in great stead all the way through.
Now, that's a great story. It's really interesting to hear because, I think the apprenticeships are, a great for young people who perhaps don't want to go down the university route, and you can really learn your trade and, still, go up the career ladder with that experience. So it's great to hear that Xerox is, really investing in that. And it's been great to hear your story and your career journey as well. So thanks very much again, Tracy, for joining me. It's been really a great conversation and really interesting to hear how Xerox is focusing on innovation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking. It's very much appreciated.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please go to quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This was the final episode of Series 3, and we look forward to seeing you in Series 4. Thanks again for joining.